I'm just going to read a tiny bit of what I wrote in the preface to start with. Long before artificial intelligence text generators such as OpenAI's ChatGPT and Google's Bard, there was Robin Shirley's poetry program, Bard, invented in 1968. Shirley was an early member of the Computer Arts Society, and using equipment that would be considered primitive today, he wrote his own algorithms in ALGOL on mainframe computers. His computer-assisted compositions heralded the future, a future visible today in aspects of technologically mediated art. So really, that's what this book is about, and it did take a very long time to come to fruition. And this was largely because of the COVID pandemic, but for other reasons as well. So I'll start off just by saying a few thank yous, and the first goes to Sarah Mallen, and I want to thank you for your belief in the book and for your staying power. It did take quite a long time. And also to Stephen Willits, who I don't know if he's going to be with us today. He was planning to come. Stephen Willits, the artist, was a very great support to the project. And he also helped with recovery of a very important lecture that George gave on tape. He had a tape recording of George from 1973 that amazingly survived 50 years. And it's here I transcribed it and reproduced it, so that's great. And then I'd also like to thank Stephen Boyd Davis, who is here in the audience from the Royal College of Art, for his chapter about George's time at the Royal College, which is all new research and is a fantastic chapter that Stephen has written for us. So thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Jonathan Bowen, our own Jonathan Bowen, wrote a foreword, which was lovely, and Nick Lambert wrote a short introduction as well. So. And I also need to thank the BCS, who paid for the inclusion of 4 images, and the Victoria and Albert Museum, who gave 4 images for free. So those of you who heard my talk earlier today know a little bit about George Mallen, but for those of you who don't, I'm just going to tell you a tiny bit about him. Well, he's a pioneer of computer systems since 1962, and he commenced his career working with British cybernetician Gordon Pask, and was one of the co-founders, along with Alan Sutcliffe and John Lansdowne, of the Computer Arts Society in '68. Around this time, George Mallen founded and became managing director of System Simulation Limited, or we call it SSL for short. And this was a software development company specializing in multimedia management systems. And it is still one of the longest running software companies in the UK. Well, SSL supported computer art and the role of computers in cultural activities in many ways since its inception. Not least, of course, the CAS collection of works on paper that were accumulated over the years and held by George Mallen at his offices at SSL. These were donated to the Victoria and Albert Museum in 2007, and it is this that established the bedrock of the foundation of the V&A's collections, now extensive collections on computer art. And this is not terribly well regarded or mentioned very often, but it's extremely important. They would not be where they are today, the V&A, with their world-famous collection of computer art, if it was not for George Mallen, who saved these works, and then they donated them in 2007. And because of the good name of the CAS, many other individual artists also donated works to the collection. People like Harold Cohen, for example, because they wanted to be a part of this new collection of the V&A. Well, as I said, Mallen worked at the Royal College of Art from 1971 for 10 years, and he was part of the Department of Design Research, focusing on computer-aided design and animation. And here he was instrumental in developing the department and introducing computing activities for artists to the RCA. Later, he held academic positions at Bournemouth University, where he was founding head of the Department of Communication Media. He was also instrumental in setting up the CASH project at Birkbeck in 2002, which received at that point the largest government grant to that date to write the history of British digital art. And without his enthusiasm, this project, the CASH project, certainly would not have existed, and I, for one, would never have got started on this journey of computer art history, and that's when I first met him. So those are the facts, but what I didn't really list above there is the fact that George, unlike others who shall remain nameless, is a very self-effacing gentleman, and he does not blow his own trumpet. He's all the better for it, in my personal opinion. He would much rather quietly and efficiently get on with things rather than loudly promoting himself. And I think it's for this reason that his major contribution to the history has been somewhat overlooked, although of course he is mentioned in my books, A Computer in the Art Room and White Heat Cold Logic. He is our last surviving founder of the Computer Arts Society, and this is why it is timely to focus on George and others in those early years from 1968. So this book deals not only with the story of his early career, but also the work of some of his compatriots and peers. And there is, of course, more work to be done to recover other important pioneers of new media and generative art who are still out there. But one of the main threads of this book, as promulgated by CAS, is that digital technology can have a very important role to play in the arts, and that by using the technology of the time in which we live, it can even lead to an increase in relevance of art and the power of artists to be a conduit for ideas and issues of our time. So in the book, therefore, it will tell you about the founding of CAS, major exhibitions like Event 1, Computer 70, Computer Graphics 70, Interact in Edinburgh, and numerous other artworks and activities. Also poetry. Robin Shirley, I briefly mentioned, also someone called Peter Kilgannon, another early CAS member who's been completely forgotten. And of course, the Eco Game, which was the first digitally driven multiplayer interactive gaming simulation in the UK, which was of course led by Mallen and worked on by many CAS members. So in many ways, George Mallen and his Eco Game were ahead of its time. But I would also like to argue that Eco Game was very much of its time. Mallen and his colleagues in the CAS, they exploited the potential of technology available to them. And they were inspired by the story of cybernetics, by the theory of cybernetics, to consider computing as an analogy of the mind. As John Lansdowne, a co-founder of the CAS, wrote, "The Eco Game was attempting to influence people in the ways that art influences people, indirectly through the images it was creating and the special way that an artist charges a set of images with emotion. The basis of all art is the idea." Well, George Mallen and the CAS in general believed in a positive human-machine interrelationship, and they posited that art could be used to embody this. This was an optimistic approach to the notion of progress, that societal change could actually be used to bring about, technology could be used to bring about societal change as a force for good. And in this model, art was a system involving feedback between machine and creator, and between creator and audience. In 1970, Eco Game proved that cross-disciplinary art projects heralded a new future for art, one that we now see in many of the presentations that were given today, and indeed in numerous contemporary artists' use of everything from virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, and so-called serious games. So hopefully it will mean that this book will mean that George and his colleagues will be a little bit better known. Thank you very much.